Tonight's webinar is on mindfulness and just a little bit about me. So I am a LMSW associate with Eden's Counseling. I kind of see people of all ages. I work with kids as young as 4 and I work with adults as well. I think my oldest client right now is in their 40s. And the thing that I really love about mindfulness is that it can be used kind of across the board, all ages. I did my graduate school and my undergrad in Michigan. That's where I'm from. I just moved to Texas in August. And so that's just a little bit about me. And again, mindfulness is really great just because we can really make it our own. And so I would like to request everyone to fill out the feedback form that's in the chat. The link is in there either before or after the webinar today. And as far as questions or anything, if we could keep them in the chat box, that would be great. And I'm not able to see the chat box right now. So at the end of the webinar, we will kind of have a question and answers. And so I just want to keep these kind of 3 questions in mind that you guys can put the answers to in the chat and I can get them to them later. So the first one is just, have we ever even heard of mindfulness? Is it easy? What works for you for it? Is it difficult? And what doesn't work? And so again, let's just kind of answer those and put them in the chat box, or if anyone wants to go ahead and pop on their mic right now and just let me know if anyone practices it currently and kind of what they notice about it. Awesome. I am actually able to see the chat box too. So if you guys want to throw some answers in the chat box, I can see those as well. So I see someone said that focusing on it can be really difficult, which it definitely is. I think that one major conception of mindfulness is the deep breathing practice, which that's definitely a big part of it. However, it's not as easy. I get a lot of clients who, when I introduce mindfulness, they're like, this is easy. We're just like going to sit here and breathe. But then afterwards, they're like, oh, wait, that was really difficult. And so part of what we'll be covering today is going to be kind of the benefits of mindfulness, how to best practice and cultivate it. And then we're going to go through a couple examples, and then I'll actually walk us through one of my favorite mindfulness practices as well. And I see a few more answers in the chat. Practicing mindfulness daily. Yes, I think that, again, with mindfulness, how anyone of any age can practice it. It's also not just for clinicians and clients. Anyone can be using mindfulness as well. So kind of just like an introduction to mindfulness is, the basic Oxford Dictionary definition is that mindfulness is a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations, used as a therapeutic technique. The way that I really like to describe mindfulness and how I introduce it to clients is that it's just as simple as giving yourself a brain break. I look at it as a way for us to calm down from a really heightened emotional state so that we can pause and come back to a situation or go about the rest of our day from a more regulated state. So again, whenever I'm introducing mindfulness to clients, part of that brain break is this difference that I like to talk about clients with is whenever we're reacting to our emotions versus responding to them. And the big difference with this is kind of in the heat of an argument, if you're ever saying things that you know that you wouldn't want to say later, that you regret saying. In that moment, we are reacting to our emotion of anger rather than responding to it. Something that my dad has always said to me from middle school very early on that's always stuck with me is this kind of quote right here is that no one's ever going to listen if you're speaking from emotions rather than facts. And that to me just always means that if you're arguing with someone or you're really upset or you're trying to get your point across, if we're so emotional that we can't say what we actually want to say, no one's ever going to be able to understand us. And so again, it comes back to mindfulness and taking that brain break so that we're able to better present ourselves and better talk about things. And so again, what does this have to do with mindfulness is that the act of mindfulness gives us that momentary pause that we need, and it gives us the chance to kind of regulate ourselves. I kind of use this example with clients where if you're walking into a bar and you see your significant other and they're with someone else, maybe your automatic reaction to your anger is to go punch the person, right? We know that if we were in a more calm state, we might not have punched the person. We might have responded a bit better. Say maybe we walked in, we saw them, and we saw that our significant other was cheating. Rather than going up and punching the person that they're with, we walked out of the bar, we took a few moments, and then we wanted to come back and respond to the situation. Not that you wouldn't be angry, but you might have reacted a bit differently. And so then we're responding a bit differently as well. When we're more aware of what our current emotion is and we're accepting it, they tend to not overwhelm us anymore. And so this can be used again when we're angry. This can be used, during PTSD flashbacks, anxiety attacks, really any situation that we just really feel like our emotions are getting the best of us and we need to just calm down. I'm going to sound like a broken record with that one, but really that's what mindfulness is all about. And again, we're going to walk through the steps and how do we cultivate mindfulness rather than just using that term so vaguely. So I like to also think about this in terms of how do we best set ourselves up for success. So another analogy that I like to use with clients is, whenever we're waking up, and say we wake up and we know that we have to leave the house at 9 a.m. So we wake up at 7 a.m., we get ready, we have a really great morning, we are on time, and we get out the door, but we accidentally spill our coffee. When we spilled our coffee, because we're already in a pretty calm and regulated state, it might not make us as angry. Say versus we woke up 10 minutes before we have to get out of the door. We barely have even enough time to make our coffee. And so at that moment, we walk out the door and we spill our coffee, and it's like, oh, wow, this is going to be the worst day ever. And so we're so mad that we spilled our coffee because our day itself was already so frazzled and it was not setting ourselves up to be able to handle the daily stresses. So even doing mindfulness in the morning, doing mindfulness before we know that we have a really long day ahead of us, giving yourself that momentary pause in the morning sets your whole day up for success. It helps you handle your daily stressors a lot better than, say, waking up 10 minutes before your alarm goes off. I have a lot of clients who come in with anxiety, and the first thing that we normally do is let's set up a really good nighttime and morning routine. Morning routine, again, because we want to set our days up for success. Nighttime routine, so that we can make sure we're getting adequate sleep, along with this kind of picture here of the spilt coffee. I like to tell clients that our sleep, food, and safety, like physical safety and mental health safety, are the plate that holds us up. If we're putting more stuff on top of our plate and the plate's broken, we're not going to get anywhere. So that plate that's made up of accurate nutrition, good sleep, and safety is really what's going to help you be able to handle your daily anxieties and your daily stresses. And, when we're talking with clients who are experiencing depression and they're trying to get themselves up every day and that's a struggle, sometimes it's not even what the first concern is. The first concern is how do we stabilize that plate and that foundation of your life so then we can tackle everything onto it. Mindfulness is really great at stabilizing that plate. This other little cartoon character here of two people arguing. I think that, again, using that example of, whenever you're really angry, you might say stuff that you regret. I think that if we look at any two people, this doesn't have to be romantic partners, it can be family members, siblings, parents, parents and children, it can be friends, it can be teachers, it can be a therapist and a client. If anyone's getting into kind of a conversation where emotions are being heightened and we're wanting to be able to respond rather than react in that moment, a lot of the times in couples therapy, we might say, let's create a safe word, let's create a safe signal. That safe signal or that safe word is the okay for any person in that conversation to walk out without any repercussions. You can't get mad at that person for leaving. You can't get mad at them for needing a pause, because that walk away and that pause hopefully will be used for mindfulness, to calm down, to regulate yourself so that you can come back to the conversation and feel like you have a better picture of things. I have a client who had a, instance happen, and one thing that we really talked about was, let's give ourselves some moments of mindfulness throughout your day. We want to be able to better handle the stress of what your daily life is, whether that be school or work. So let's set a reminder on your phone. At 1:30 every single day, we're going to do 5 minutes of mindfulness. And that one change in the schedule has really helped them. That 1:30 mark is kind of right around lunchtime for them. That is the middle of their day. It really helps them be able to continue until 5 p.m. and not feel like when they get home after work at the end of the day that they just have to shut down for hours and have like that zombie brain, which I'm sure that we all get, that moment of trying to decompress after a really long day, which is kind of like this third character here with the news and the cell phone and the COVID-19. I think that everyone these last couple of years, are all of our schedules have been so thwarted, and there's been so much on the news, and it's like so much information, and sometimes it's too much information. I have one client who said that their mindfulness is not watching the news every day, that if they want to know something, they'll Google it rather than putting something on TV. And, the thing about mindfulness that's so nice is that we can really make it whatever we want to make it. And so, just some of these examples, we can move on to kind of the nitty gritties of when this can be most beneficial as well, is like this example of this panic attack. I know that a lot of people, when they hear the term panic attack or anxiety attack, you automatically think of someone who's hyperventilating. They can't control their breath. When in reality, it can be someone that has an upset stomach. It can be that sitting in a room full of people feeling like you're alone. It can be that constant rumination of your thoughts. It can be the feeling of, I'm going to die. I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm having a heart attack right now. My body's tingling. It's not always visible to the outside eye. And again, with mindfulness, because you can make it whatever you want, we can really do it whenever. We can do it whenever and wherever. We can do it alone. We can do it in groups of people. We don't need to buy anything for it. We don't need to have anything special. You can just do it with your own body. And so, who can use mindfulness? Again, it's adapted to fit all ages. A lot of the exercises that I do, I can do the same one, and I can do it with my adult clients. I can do it with my teenage clients. I can do it with my 5-year-olds. It's really useful for teachers and students. I have a couple friends who are teachers, and they like to start their kindergarten classroom off with mindfulness. And that really just helps get the kids in gear for the rest of the day. Clinicians can use this in between clients. Say you have a really heavy session and you feel like really dysregulated from all of the stuff that you just took on from your clients. Clinicians are people too. And so our emotions can sometimes be really affected by our clients and what we're talking about in the session that day. And so sometimes shutting my door after a really long session and just taking 5 minutes to do deep breathing, to kind of make sure that what happened with that client's leaving with that client and not getting carried over into the next session. Sometimes that can be really beneficial. At the end of the day, usually I like to do a mindfulness before I get out of my car and go into my house, because I don't want to take work with me into my home life. And I think that anyone can relate to work-life balance, whether we're a student or whether you're in a career or whether you're in the midst of both. It's really hard to find that balance, and mindfulness can be used in between those moments, when we're trying to take off our work hat or our student hat and we're trying to put on our home life hat. Mindfulness can be really good in those transitional moments. And really, it can be used for anyone who's wanting to be more in tune with themselves and with their own emotions. I have clients who, due to trauma, have gone through so much in their life that they just report feeling numb. And it's not that they're actually not able to experience their emotions, but it's that they've either been processed in the wrong way, responded to in the wrong way, and so over time, they just learn to suppress them so much. And so mindfulness can sometimes really be used to help us learn more about our own emotions and what we need to better, again, respond to them versus reacting to them. So I like to think of these as like a few pillars of cultivating mindfulness. So we can sit here and we can say, let's engage in some mindfulness all we want, but how do we actually partake in mindfulness? How do we actually set ourselves up for that? And one thing is non-judging. So this means that we want to be an impartial witness in our emotions in these moments. So we all have that judgy brain. And I think that we're all our own worst critic. We tend to judge ourselves way more than anyone in our life will judge us. And because of that, when we're experiencing a certain emotion, sometimes we tend to either write off what we're feeling and telling ourselves that we're being dramatic, or sometimes we tell ourselves that we're not responding in the right way. We should be responding differently. So when we're trying to engage in mindfulness, one of the first things that we want to do is to not judge ourselves. We want to try to look at the situation like a bystander. So people talk about therapy and how it's nice because the therapist is a impartial party. They're non-biased in your life. When we're setting up mindfulness, you want to try to be your own therapist in that moment. You want to try to be an impartial party, and you want to try to be looking at the situation like you're watching it on TV. It's kind of how I like to think about it. And so that's whenever we're trying to, again, be the impartial witness to our own emotions and try to separate the experience of how we're feeling versus what we're actually trying to look at. Again, if we're looking at it like we're on TV, we're trying to take ourselves out of the equation there. And patience. I know in the chat when we first started, people were like, it's really hard. Patience really is key with mindfulness. I tell clients all the time, let's start small. Well, you're going to start with a minute of deep breathing, because that minute of deep breathing for the first time is going to feel like 5 minutes have gone by, because it really takes a while to be able to hone in on these skills. And I tell clients all the time, don't only do this whenever I'm in the room with you. Don't only do this for the last 5 minutes of our session once a week. You really got to practice this at home, and you have to practice it even whenever you're not distressed. That way, when you are distressed, these skills come so quickly to you. And so again, the patience and is like the act of understanding that in their own time, everything's going to unfold. And it may not be how you're picturing it, but we are trying to take the time necessary and the space necessary to create these practices for ourselves. And we want to have this third pillar here is beginner's mind. So sometimes we're often blinded by our own emotions and how they're attached to things. In mindfulness, we try to create this beginner's mind in which we're seeing everything for the first time. So again, we're trying to separate ourselves from the equation, and we're trying to look at it like it's happening for the very first time without any preconceived notions of how we're expecting it to go. And then let's go to the next slide. The fourth one is trust. So again, relating back to clients who talk about feeling numb, I don't know how to experience my emotions. We're trying with mindfulness to develop a trust in yourself and a trust in your own emotions. Not telling yourself I'm being dramatic, not telling yourself I should be responding a different way, but trusting what your emotion is in that moment. Because again, our emotions sometimes they tend to cloud our judgment for things. And again, it's that aspect of, are we reacting or are we responding to it? So with mindfulness, we're trying to trust our immediate emotions, and we're trying to trust ourselves, and we're trying to trust our feelings and our intuitions about things. And we're trying to be open and receptive that these could be different from what actually is happening. We're trying to have a non-striving mind here too with mindfulness. Meditation takes and mindfulness takes a lot of work and energy and a lot of patience. And as human beings, we feel like we always have to be on the go. We feel like our schedules sometimes always have to be busy. We don't feel like we're doing anything when we're relaxing. And we're trying to have this non-doing, non-striving mindset. We always tell ourselves, if only I could relax. I feel like clients tell me all the time, like, I just don't know how to relax. If only I could relax. But then when you're focusing so much on relaxing, you're not actually relaxing. You're probably thinking about how much you should be doing in those moments. So with mindfulness, we're trying to create that non-striving mind. And that's not the same as no effort, because mindfulness does take effort, but it's non-striving. You're trying to let go of what you think the results should be. If you think at the end of this 5 minutes, you should be the most relaxed version of yourself that you've ever been, you're not going to be the relaxed version of yourself that you've ever been in those 5 minutes, because you're going to be so focused on trying to relax that you're not ever going to relax. So again, we're trying to have that non-striving, I have no intentions kind of mindset right there with that one. And this other one is acceptance, the sixth pillar. Our mindfulness isn't about telling yourself everything good is going to happen. And part of this acceptance in this last one, letting go and letting be, is that we're telling ourselves, I accept my emotions. I accept that I feel anxious right now. I accept that I'm angry. I accept that I'm hurt. I accept that I'm depressed, because that is my valid emotion. And no one can tell you what your emotions are other than yourself. And so when we start to accept our emotions, sometimes that leads us to be able to see them and not be afraid of them. I have a client who told me that they were afraid to be sad, because if they were sad, that meant that nothing would be good ever again. They were really judging that emotion of sadness. And so what we really worked on was that rather than telling yourself that you can't be sad, let's accept the sadness. Let's try to work through it rather than pushing against it. And that mindset was a game changer for this client. It allowed them to feel sadness without feeling overtaken and like they couldn't move through being sad. And so whenever we learn to accept what our emotion is, we learn to accept that it's there, but it's not going to control us. That, I like to use the phrase, like, just because you have anxiety doesn't mean you are anxiety. You're a person with anxiety, but anxiety is not who you are. And so again, it's accepting and acknowledging that our feelings are there and being receptive to whatever it is, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're seeing. We know that we will have the strength to overcome it eventually, but we're not going to let it overwhelm us and overcome us right now. And so that last one, again, of letting go and letting be, is putting aside your tendency to only focus on the good. I think that a lot of the times when someone has something going on, someone's automatic response is, well, what do you have good going on? Sometimes that's not what anyone needs to hear. Sometimes you just need to hear, yeah, that really sucks, and I'm really sorry you're going through that. And so when we put away a tendency to only focus on the good and we let the bad be the bad, sometimes it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. Sometimes when we accept that emotion and we let it be what it is, it no longer feels like this dark black cloud that's looming over you that's never going to go away. And so those are the 7 pillars that I like to start with when we're trying to cultivate mindfulness. And so again, it's non-judging, it's being patient, it's trying to look at everything like you're looking at it for the first time. It's trusting your intuition, it's trusting your feelings. It's non-striving. We don't have any goals with this. It's accepting our emotions and it's letting them go and letting them be rather than, again, trying to always change them. So another, like, this little diagram is really nice to look at, because whenever we try to learn how to set our mind for mindfulness, well, how do we actually practice it? So some of this can look like, we have the basic character in the middle here where it looks like someone who's meditating with their legs crossed and their arms in the air and they're going, This doesn't always have to be what mindfulness is, but with this one, it's taking a seat. It's finding a place that's really calm and quiet. Sometimes it's not always an option. And so I always like to ask clients, like, when would you most be using this? Would you be using this at work? Would you be using this at school? Would you be using it when you're out at the bar with your friends? Would it be you be using it on the subway? Those aren't places that you can sit and be quiet. So we can always learn. Again, what's great about mindfulness is that we can make it how we want it. So we don't always need that quiet space. And sometimes it's just nice to learn mindfulness in the quiet, because then you learn how to also take it and create it into what you need in your daily life. And the other part of that is noticing our body. So it's noticing, are you feeling really fidgety that day? It's noticing how we're sitting. Are we comfortable? Do we feel tense? It's getting in a place that's going to be really comfortable for you. And, again, we can do mindfulness standing up. We can do it sitting down. It's going to be whatever is most comfortable. It's feeling our breath. And a lot of guided meditation and guided mindfulness breathings will tell you, like, let's notice how the air feels as it's moving through your lungs. Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it short? Are you able to take a long breath? And so when we start to feel our breath and mindfulness and the deep breathing, usually we want a deep breathing that stems from breathing from your stomach, not just your diaphragm, which to anyone who has not practiced deep breathing, that's a really different way of breathing as well. It's noticing when our mind has wandered, because again, clients all the time, they're like, oh, this is going to be so easy, but it's not easy trying to kind of calm your mind down. And the goal of mindfulness isn't to have a blank mind, but again, back to those 7 pillars, it's learning how to not judge the thoughts as they come and the feelings as they come, because your thoughts are going to wander. You're going to get distracted by, oh, my leg feels like it's itching. The moment that we say we need to relax and not move, we're going to want to move. And so it's noticing how our body is feeling and giving it a few seconds to focus on that. And then we're just going to want to bring our attention back to the task at hand, which is either going to be the deep breathing, the guided imagery, whatever that mindfulness practice is that you're doing. And that last one is just to be kind to yourself. And, be kind to your wandering mind. Again, we're trying to turn off that judgy brain, and we're trying to really let ourselves be our own therapist, basically, in the moments of mindfulness. So some examples of mindfulness, because again, the thing that I love about this is that you really make it whatever you want it to be. You can turn anything into a mindfulness practice. It can be as simple as deep breathing. We can do things like progressive muscle relaxation. And on the next slide, I've included a few links that everyone will be able to look at. And they're my most basic ones. They're on YouTube that I always love to pull for clients. That way they're not having to subscribe or buy anything. And they're really great beginners practices for mindfulness. And so progressive muscle relaxation is really great because it helps you be in tune with where you're holding tension in your body. And again, the mindfulness part of this is we're trying to be in tune with our body, and we're trying to be in tune with our thoughts. And it'll walk you through, and it'll tell you where to tense and where to release the tension. And I love it because half the time when I do it, I don't even realize that my jaw was so locked and so tense. And that's where I was holding my anxiety that day. Another thing is guided imagery. There's tons of these. You can have Harry Styles and Robert Pattinson walk you through guided imagery on the Calm app. You can walk yourself through a guided imagery. You can go through a forest or a beach, kind of wherever you want. There's multiple of these on YouTube. And on the resource slide, I included one that's a forest and a beach. And these two are usually my clients' most favorites whenever I'm introducing them into guided imagery. Another one is journaling. So we can do mindful journaling. Again, this is part of we're wanting to create a non-judging mind. A lot of the time whenever I have clients who are having ruminating thoughts, so that constant thought on repeat, how do we get it out of our head? Let's journal it down. Let's get it out of our head and put it onto paper, into words, and not judging what's there. You can keep it, you can rip it up later if you want, but we're not going to judge the thoughts that are in our mind. There's grounding techniques such as something called the 5-4-3-2-1, which I have also linked, and that walks you through how to ground yourself in a panic attack, how to ground yourself when you're feeling really overwhelmed, whatever it may be is going on with your five senses. So it's really nice because again, it's using your body. You don't need anything for this one. We can do mindful coloring. I have an adult coloring book in my office that clients love to use whenever we're talking. It helps them kind of keep their hands busy, but also, it helps them have a more mindful conversation with me because they're not focusing so much on what they're saying, but they're rather focusing on the drawing. And then whatever spills out, spills out. Yoga. Yoga is really a big practice of mindfulness. We don't have to do yoga when we're doing mindfulness, but we can be mindful while we're doing yoga. We can go for mindful walks on YouTube. There's a lot of mindful walk little snippets that you can listen to while you're walking, and it walks you through how to be mindful of the area around you. So I'll sure that whenever we take what I like to call a mental health walk, sometimes it's really hard to shut off our brain and not be focusing on everything that's going on about your day. So the mindful walking is nice because you're listening to something which is distracting your mind. You're getting some body movement in, which is always great to help relieve stress. And at that point, too, it's telling you what to focus on. And so if we're having a really difficult time practicing the non-judging mind and not judging the fact that our mind's wandering to other things, I like to use the walking ones or even like listening to music while we're practicing mindfulness and deep breathing because it's giving your mind something to listen to and giving your mind that brain break while also giving your body something to do. And so again, this following slide is going to be for your use. It has a deep breathing. It's got two different guided imageries on it. It's got a grounding technique. It has a progressive muscle relaxation. And then I even included how to also create mindfulness with little kids. So one of the big ones, so this last slide was, a lot of these can be used for children as well, but sometimes children have a much more difficult time focusing. So the following slide had a deep breathing practice for mindfulness. If anyone listening has kids or if you work with kids, these can be really, really great. There is the hand. It's I'm not sure if anyone can even see my video right now, but if we put your hand in front of you and you take an inhale and you trace your thumb and you go up and then you exhale and go down. I call it the hand breathing for little kids. The tactile sensation of touching their hand can calm them down while inhaling and exhaling. When you tell a kid to take a deep breath, they're like, what does that even mean? So you just inhale at the length of your fingers and then you exhale. And it's that, again, that tactile sensation of touching their hand can calm them down, as well as helping them learn how to control their breathing with that. You can do squared breathing. I think the video that I included the link of is it's a fish walking through how to do box breathing with little kids. And that one is basically you just make a box in the air. It's inhaling at one side of the box and it's exhaling and inhaling and exhaling. And you're just going around and they're making a box in the air. And that one, you can really make that one whatever you want. You can do one big box. You can do a box inside of boxes. And again, it's giving their hands something to do because they're little and they need to feel fidgety and like distracted. But then also teaching them how to control their breath while they're fidgeting and while they're moving around. So what I would like to do is practice my favorite before we move on to any questions or anything like that. This mindfulness can basically, it can take as long as we want it to, and it can be as short as you need it to. So I had the honor of working with my professor and my supervisor for my internship in my grad school. Her name was Erin Martinez. She owned her own private practice, which is where I interned, and she again was also my professor. And this one is completely hers. I'm not sure if she made it herself or if she adapted it, but it's something that I've really taken with me and that I really enjoy doing with clients. It's a form of guided imagery. And what's really nice is that this one specifically is really great for those who have experienced trauma. It's really great to use if you're working with a client who you just talked about something that was very traumatic, or even if you're sitting at home, and I've told clients before, if you're experiencing really traumatic thoughts, you can't get out of it, you feel unsafe, let's practice this mindfulness. Let's practice it outside of session. So this isn't just something that a clinician can teach a client, but also something a client can do on their own at home. It's something that anyone with thoughts that make them feel unsafe can do. So we know with those who experience PTSD flashbacks, our memories a lot of the time tend to make us feel unsafe. When we're remembering something really negative that happened, whether that be a trauma or a conversation or any kind of memory that brings you distress, sometimes we tend to forget that we're still physically safe, that that memory is in the past and it's not going to hurt us right now. But again, the memory makes it feel like it does. And that's why you have instances of someone who is going through a PTSD flashback and they're not aware of their surroundings. And so they might hurt someone around them, not because they mean to, but because that memory felt so unsafe that they felt right back where they were when they were experiencing that trauma. I don't know if anyone in this chat watches Grey's Anatomy, but Owen Hunt, one of the main characters on there, had this episode where he was experiencing a PTSD flashback and he was, lying with his girlfriend and he attacked her. He didn't mean to, but in that moment, his mind put him right back to where he was. This safe place mindfulness that I'm about to walk us through is really great. And if anyone in the chat right now, you don't have to think about anything specific. I'm just going to walk us through this and how I would look with a client. If you want to participate, you don't have to outwardly participate, but you can choose a memory, whether something popped up as soon as I started talking about this or not, or maybe just something really stressful that happened today. Or maybe just we're going to take all of today's contents and we're going to use that for this mindfulness. So again, I want to walk us through it before we move on to questions and answers and try to really hone in on those pillars. We're not going to judge our mind if it wanders. We're going to be kind to ourselves. We're not going to strive to relax right now. We're just going to listen to the words and try to participate the best that we can. So with that being said, if everyone wants to get as comfortable as they can wherever they are, and you can either close your eyes or rest them where it's going to feel comfortable for you. And I want us to take 3 deep breaths. And again, we're going to breathe from our stomach, not just our chest. While we're breathing now, I want us to imagine a safe place. Whether this is somewhere that you've been in your life, maybe it's your favorite childhood memory, maybe it's somewhere you're going to create on your own. I want you to really imagine that place. If you're at a beach, what does the sand feel like beneath your toes? Can you smell the salt in the air? Can you hear the waves? Really picture the textures and the sounds and the colors of your safe place. If we're sitting down someplace in our safe place, is it comfortable? Are you alone there? Did you bring someone else into your safe place with you? Really build this up in your mind. I want you to now create a dresser in your safe place. It's going to look a little weird if we're at a beach, but let's just put a dresser there. In the top drawer of that dresser is anything that we've talked about today. It's whatever memory we're holding on to. We're in our safe place and we see that this negative memory is there and it's not going to hurt us. I want you to now also picture a container. This can be a box, it can be a jar, maybe it's a giant pool. We're going to open up that drawer and we're going to take all of those negative memories that we've talked about today. We're going to put it into this container. And we're going to put a lid on it. We're now looking at these negative memories, and they don't make us feel safe in our mind, but physically, they cannot hurt us right now. I'm going to walk up and I'm going to take that container from you, and I'm going to walk away with it. We don't have to think about these today for the rest of the day if we don't want to. They cannot hurt you. We don't have to talk about them again until we meet next time. Now the dresser is gone, the container is gone, the negative memories are gone, and all you're left with is your safe place. And I want us to just spend a few more moments here, really breathing in the safety that you feel. Whenever you're ready, you can open up your eyes and rejoin me. So the thing that I really like about this is that it's really great, again, to be used for those who are experiencing trauma, because we know that in order to talk about trauma, we have to feel physically safe, and we have to trust the person and feel safe with the person that we're talking about it with. And if we're alone and we're practicing the safe place meditation, I like to insert myself into the safe place and taking away the negative memory so that when my client's practicing it on their own, they can imagine me taking away their negative memories and they don't have to talk about them again until they're with their safe person. I've had clients take this a step further, and their container was a mason jar, and they went and bought a mason jar, and anytime they had a traumatic memory pop up or something negative happened throughout the day that they were too overwhelmed to handle, they've written it down and put it in that jar and brought it with them to session for us to talk about then. And so you can really adapt this however you want. And we can spend as long as we need to there. I tell clients all the time, if you're starting to feel really overwhelmed with your thoughts, with a traumatic memory, a way, if you're not a clinician, a way to practice this is to, in your own life, we can practice it on our own. And just imagine your most favorite person in the world being in that safe place with you and taking away those negative memories and not acknowledging them and talking about them, because we know we don't ever want to fully repress negative memories. We know they don't actually ever go away, but it's okay to not talk about them and to not think about them until you feel safe to do so. And the safe place helps us acknowledge that while these memories aren't that great, that they cannot physically hurt me right here. And so that is all that I have material wise, but I wanted to open up the floor. If anyone has any questions, again, let's try to keep them in the chat and I will do my best to go through with them. If anyone has any questions about things that we've talked about, any questions about mindfulness, any more answers to, do you think it's difficult? Do you think it's easy once we talked more about it? I'll give a minute or two to see if any questions flow in. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be added to our YouTube channel. And so with that, I will talk with my admin team about also maybe including the links to these into the caption of the YouTube video. That a way everyone can have access to it. So a question is, how do you practice mindfulness if you feel yourself getting upset? So one thing that we know about mindfulness is because it's not always as easy as we think that it might be, it's really beneficial to use even when you're not feeling upset. So say you're sitting at work and you don't have anything to do, or you have a 5-minute break. Let's practice a mindfulness technique when we're feeling regulated and calm. That way, when we are feeling upset, it's easier to grab those tools from our box. And so a way to practice it if we feel ourselves getting upset is to try to take that judgy brain away and not judge yourself for feeling upset and just asking yourself, like, what do I need right now? Sometimes we're not always going to need deep breathing. Sometimes we're not always going to need progressive muscle relaxation or guided imagery. And it's trying to learn how to be in tune with your emotions so that you know what you need in that moment. So there's no like easy answer of how do we use it. Because one thing that I always tell clients is that I can give you all these tools, but it's up to you to use them outside of session. So it's up to each of us whenever we're learning these things to practice them daily and to learn how to use them. Another question is, what age do you think I can help my child be mindful? So one of the links that I included is deep breathing, and this can start as early as 3 years old. So if we're having a child with separation anxiety, one thing that we can do is help them learn how to regulate their breathing. And we can do that through the hand stimulation, through the boxed breathing. One thing, I had a little cousin of mine, they were in a car accident with their mom, and they were terrified of going on the highway. They were terrified of the rain. So we were practicing mindfulness in the car while the car's parked in the driveway. That way they feel more regulated in the car, and then we're going to be reintroducing that as it's raining, as it's storming, as they're driving. And so mindfulness, again, I love it because it can be adapted for any age. And the next question is, what is the best way to get rid of my monkey mind? So I'm going to assume that monkey mind means like the wandering. It's going to mean like the fidgety mind. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But the monkey mind for me is to not judge ourselves if we're wandering. Because if we're just sitting here and not doing anything, it's only human nature to be thinking about everything else that we should be doing that day. And so one way to do that is to practice that concept of not judging our emotions and our thoughts as they come at us. And it can be as simple as, yeah, wow, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to do progressive muscle relaxation, but I know that I have 10 other things that I should be doing that day. Try to take that should word out of your vocabulary and stop telling yourself what we should be doing in that moment and just doing what you need, which if we're trying to practice mindfulness and experiencing the monkey mind, we're most likely in that moment really needing 5 minutes of relaxation because that can help you better handle the rest of your day. And so whether that's just sitting there like, okay, yeah, I know that. I'm just going to give myself these 5 minutes because I deserve it. If I'm thinking about that argument that I had earlier with a friend, or if I'm thinking about the fact that I need to go make dinner for my kids, or if I'm thinking about all of these notes, all this work that I have to be doing, if I should be studying right now, I'm going to tell myself, yeah, like that's a lot that I need to be doing. I'm not going to be able to handle that if I'm feeling so dysregulated and overwhelmed. Because if we think about an 8-hour workday, none of us are working for 8 hours straight. And when we learn how to use mindfulness to also help us manage our time a bit better and telling ourselves, like, yeah, I have an hour of work. I know that I'm not going to be working for an hour, but how can I be most productive? If I'm so overwhelmed about my day in that hour, I'm most likely going to tune out the rest of my day. I'm going to zone out and I'm not actually going to be working. So just kind of telling yourself, like, I deserve these 5 minutes because these 5 minutes are going to help me be more productive. Was monkey mind, was the wandering mind, was that correct for monkey mind? All right. Did anyone have any other questions about like the 7 pillars? Do you want more like explanation on how to cultivate mindfulness? Any more explanation on how to practice it? Did anyone want to practice like a deep breathing mindfulness? I see a couple yeses. All right, let me go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pull up a guided breathing mindfulness then that we can all practice. I see that we want more info on mindfulness. So again, this will be all of the resources that I use to put together this presentation are going to be included on the PowerPoint, and I will get with admin on how to make the links accessible to you guys as well, because even these, let me go back through the presentation. Even the 7 pillars that I usually use to explain mindfulness, I found a link that further explains them as well. And I will talk with admin about how do we make this into something accessible for all of you guys to get the links to. Again, maybe I will just comment on the YouTube video and put all the links in for you guys. What I will do right now is I will pull up my most basic mindfulness that I like to start with clients, and it's just a few minutes long. And so I want to leave a extra minute to see if there's any more questions in the chat box before I pull up a extra mindfulness activity for us to do. So I see the question is, what is the YouTube video website? So Eden's Counseling has a YouTube page, and that's where all of these free webinars get posted. And so once this recording is finished and admin gets it uploaded, I again will just go on myself and comment all the links to these mindfulness other activities as well. And most of the ones that are going to be on the PowerPoint that will be made accessible to you guys through the YouTube video, those are YouTube videos. And so I put in these parentheses what the names of them are. So you could even just go on and look at the slideshow and see what the name of the mindfulness is and plug that in on YouTube, and you'll see it pop up. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up a deep breathing mindfulness activity. This is the one that when I'm introducing clients to mindfulness, this is the one that I start with because most deep breathing and most mindfulness stems from how do we practice deep breathing and how do we cultivate that awareness and that non-judging brain and things like that. And so I'm going to get that pulled up and then we'll have, again, just a few minutes that we can practice that one. Right, I was just going to leave an extra minute for any more questions, but I don't see any more popping up. So let me again get that link pulled up and then I will go ahead and finish us off. Sure, it's been a long day for everyone. And so it will finish us off on a really good note for this evening. And I, again, am just having a bit of a technical difficulty trying to get this link pulled up. So just bear with me for a quick second. All right, well, give me one second because the video that I normally use is no longer available. And so let me just pull up a different one. Here we go. Let me get my headphones out just because sound won't work with them in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And I saw one more question in the chat is, are websites like Calm and Headspace helpful? I would say yes. I even heard that there's another one called the Dare app. And these are really helpful because YouTube has a lot of free stuff. Sometimes YouTube will even have Calm exercises and the Headspace exercises available for free. And Calm does have free, but there's also like subscriptions that you can pay for as well. So I always like to use YouTube as a resource for clients, just because again, YouTube doesn't require you to pay or anything. So I'm going to share my screen for this Headspace mindfulness. This one I believe again is off the Calm app, because what's great is that they do also provide stuff on YouTube. So it's going to be 3 minutes of deep breathing on, let's just follow along with the video. I'm going to go ahead and pause this just because I want to leave an extra minute in case anyone has questions. So what's really nice about the beginners videos like this for deep breathing is that it's teaching you the skills. And if you notice, the circle was getting bigger and bigger to show you how to practice taking deeper and deeper breaths. And you always want to like kind of hold it and then release the breath. And there's other videos and things that, again, after we're learning how to do the deep breathing and the controlled breathing, that's like the foundation, and we can add on top of that. And then that's whenever we can add, let's try to bring our attention back to the task at hand. Let's try to not let our thoughts wander. But again, this right here is a really great video to teach you just the basic practice of deep breathing consistently, because we can all take a really deep breath. Like the doctors tell us from a very young age to take one deep breath for me. But to be practicing deep breathing for a minute to 2 to 3 to 5 minutes takes practice. And this circle that gets bigger and bigger for a deeper and deeper breath is really nice. And with that, thank you everyone for joining. Please, the link for the feedback form is in the chat. Please just take a couple minutes to fill that out. And then if there's no other questions, I just want to thank everyone for joining me today. Mindfulness is one of my favorite topics to talk about. It's useful again for everyone, which is really great. It's not a topic that's specific to only one kind of person. So again, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you. It was very helpful. Thank you so much, guys. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your evening.